Hi, and welcome to today's Engaging for Missouri webinar. I'm Alice Roach from the Division of Applied Social Sciences at the University of Missouri, and I'll be your host today. With each of these 30-minute webinars, we intend to share research-based insights that leaders like you can apply in your own work to benefit and strengthen the state's agriculture and food system, hospitality sector, and communities. Today, we have two speakers here to share about preparing farms and agribusinesses for COVID-19, Dr. Rob Russell and Joe Horner. Before I invite them to begin, I want to share a few housekeeping notes. First, we'll close the webinar today with a question and answer session. For those of you who connected to today's webinar via your computer, you can submit your questions in the chat screen, and you can open up that chat screen just by clicking the chat button that you see at the bottom of your Zoom menu ribbon. If you'd like to submit questions, if you've joined by phone, then you can send me an email at roacham@missouri.edu. Second, all attendees are muted and may not start their video. Third, if you encounter any technical difficulties, then you can let me know by either submitting a comment in the chat screen, or you can also send me an email at roacham@missouri.edu. And fourth, we will make a recorded version of the webinar available to you. You can look for an email from Zoom that shares more about where you can access that recorded copy in about a day from now. Additionally, you can also find an archive of all previous Engaging for Missouri webinars on our division's YouTube page. So now we'll transition to the topic of today's webinar, which is titled Strategies to Prepare Your Farm or Agribusiness for COVID-19. Presenting on this topic are Dr. Rob Russell, who is the Director of MU Extension's Labor and Workforce Development Program, and Joe Horner, who's an agricultural economist and extension specialist. So thank you, Rob and Joe, for being here today. If you could please start your video and unmute your microphone, then we can begin your presentation.
All right, good morning. Thank you all for having us here. This is Rob, and a couple of things here as we talk about preparing your farm and agribusiness for COVID-19. These are general guidelines. A lot of it's from the CDC and things like that. But best practices are what we're talking about for farms and business, and individual situations might vary. And so you've got to figure that out within the context of your own business, what makes sense here. Now, being a geographer, we can't start a presentation without a map here, right? And as we think about COVID-19 in the state of Missouri, this is data from yesterday from the State Department of Health and Human Services. What do we know about COVID-19? Well, first of all, we know that there are 3,500 cases reported as of yesterday, 77 deaths. We know that the majority of those deaths are people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. At least the data that I saw yesterday had one reported death from somebody in their 30s and somebody in their 40s. So it's hitting urban areas in the state as well as older populations more than rural areas here. So St. Louis County has by far the most cases. St. Louis Metro is the hotspot for Missouri, but Kansas City, particularly into Wyandotte County, is also fairly significant here. I will note, though, as you look at the list of cases here, it doesn't take very far to get down to once you get out to the non-metropolitan areas. In Perry County, Missouri, has the 13th most cases in Missouri at 31 cases reported there. So we are seeing this spreading in rural Missouri also, and in different areas of the state. It is impacting producers and businesses and things like that. There's actually a sociologist at St. Louis University, and I love this map. He's showing this data daily and looking at different ways of mapping COVID-19 effects in Missouri and a little bit over into Illinois too. And the other thing that this shows that I like is going back to Perry County here. If we look at this as a rate there of infections per 1,000 people, we actually see that Perry County has the highest rate of infections in the state of Missouri. It's higher than St. Louis County, St. Louis City. It's higher than Wyandotte County in Kansas also. And so, there's 31 cases reported as of yesterday there, but given on a per capita basis, this is out in rural Missouri too, and something that we should be paying attention to and we need to be preparing our businesses for. So a few strategies, general strategies. I'm going to talk much more generally than Joe will. Joe's going to get into agribusiness and farm issues much more so than I will. But a few things that we're recommending businesses, and the CDC, other entities are recommending businesses to do. First of all is educate your employees about the disease and the symptoms of that disease and encourage them to stay home if they are ill. Employers do have the ability to send sick employees home. That is within your right. There's actually been some changes in guidance from the EEOC about taking temperatures in the short term here, that it is allowing it. Normally that is a illegal activity without any other reason to do that, but they are allowing employers to do that. A lot of attorneys and law firms are recommending that that is not enough from a business perspective to protect yourself from unreasonable programs and protect yourself from this here, that you need to be doing more than that. If employees or you yourself have a fever, cough, or difficulty breathing, contact a medical professional. Telehealth visits are becoming the norm, at least in the parts of Missouri that I'm most familiar with there. If it is an in-person visit, the encouragement is to call ahead so that the provider can take extra precautions and make sure that they are ready to protect themselves so they can continue providing those services there. The other thing that businesses need to think about is they need to make sure that their policies are updated to address employees who are sick due to COVID-19. There was an act called the Families First Coronavirus Response Act that was passed that extends FMLA leave as well as paid sick leave for employees who are affected by this and businesses affected by it. There are tax credits available for those businesses to receive compensation for that, but you need to make sure your policies reflect this. Secondly, we are encouraging employers to practice social distancing as much as they can here. Maintaining that 6-foot distance between employees, if possible, is great. The CDC and others are recommending telework or remote work when possible. We recognize that that's not possible in a lot of situations. The picture that I have here is actually grocery stores. They've installed plexiglass shields to try and help protect their employees there where they can't keep that 6-foot distance. Limiting large group gatherings is another avenue, as well as staggering the start and end of shifts if possible to help limit employee exposure to each other and your family and your workforce's exposure to each other. If social distancing is not possible, providing other adequate safety measures is encouraged. Personal protective equipment, if you have it available, is strongly encouraged there. And that includes making sure people have gloves, making sure that they have ventilation masks and things like that to protect them, and other ways to protect themselves there. The final thing in terms of social distancing is restricting unnecessary travel. This can include things like documenting what employees should be traveling and limiting the number of employees that should be traveling to do certain work for your business there. But limiting that travel and keeping it confined to a certain subset of employees is strongly encouraged. Practicing good hygiene and biosecurity is also encouraged for all businesses there. One of the things that as they talk about COVID-19, providing adequate hand washing is a key there. So employers need to be providing additional hand washing facilities as well as breaks for your employees to clean their hands and wash their hands there. When that's not available, hand sanitizer is recommended, but hand washing with soap and water, doing it for 20 seconds is what employers are recommending, or what the CDC is recommending here. Also in your facility, make sure you regularly clean and disinfect the workplace, including the equipment that you have there. Strongly encouraging a cleaning schedule, encouraging employers to abide by the CDC and EPA guidelines for cleaning and cleaning products, and make sure that your employees are being safe when cleaning also. The picture here, you see that they are fully suited up to ensure the cleaning that needs to be done there. For employers, if you're not able to keep a location clean, the encouragement from the CDC is to close those areas to all employees then. That protects yourself, that protects your workforce. Finally, developing a workforce staffing and contingency plan is encouraged there. One of the things I would say is you need to prepare, assuming that COVID-19 will come to your operation. If you do that, you have a plan in place in order to grapple with it there. That includes identifying essential jobs and functions and figuring out how you're going to fill those roles as we go into the planting season and everything like that. That's particularly key there. A couple of key recommendations are cross-training employees so that employees can do multiple jobs in your facility if possible. Another recommendation is trying to divide your employees into smaller teams and then having those teams isolate from each other in order to limit the disruption that happens from a quarantine. So, again, as we talk about staggering start and end shifts, if you have people on teams, team A starts at this time, team B starts at this time, keeping them separate. That way, if one employee gets sick and spreads it to that team, only that team is quarantined and not the entire operation. There are a few resources out here from OSHA, 2 publications. One, and I've got links to them here, which we can share, a guidance on preparing workforces for COVID-19 that's been out for a month or so. But then just this last week, they've actually put a new guide sheet out, 10 steps that all workplaces can take to reduce the risk of exposure to coronavirus. These are available online and can be things that you can have in your workplace and have available for you. The final thing I'll say about preparation, it's not too early to start thinking about coming back to work and what that looks like. My team is working on some guidance on what coming back to work and how you come back to work, looking at other work stoppages, whether it's labor stoppages due to a strike or a lockout, whether it's government shutdowns, whether it's simple retooling of facilities and things like that. But part of that process is going to be thinking that it's going to have you thinking that you don't want to assume that the day that we can go back to work that the lights are going to be on and everything's going to be working the same as it has been. All right, I think Joe, you're next here.
All right, thanks, Rob. If we go to the happy Good Friday, everybody. If we go to the next slide, it's a very familiar slide.
I'm working on it here, Joe. There we go. There we are.
I think everybody has seen the Johns Hopkins website that just shows where the infection rate is. The only thing I'll bring to everybody's attention is something Rob mentioned. This is across the whole Midwest. We have infection clusters in most areas, and you can assume that those areas that don't have them probably will get them. If it's not, we have a natural advantage on the farms. People naturally separate. We're not taking subways to work. We got into this late. We understand where it's going, so we have a natural advantage. One risk we've got is we have to stay vigilant against this as farms. We know that one of our weakest links is processing plants, and if you look at those dots, you can see where we might have poultry processing plants, milk processing plants, hog processing plants. At any given time, they may have positives that take them out of production and introduce randomness into our whole farming schedule. So if we want to turn to the next slide. If we look at Missouri's forecast, there we go. Missouri's forecast for the epidemic. Again, we are benefiting by shutting down before the virus really got rolling in most of rural Missouri, and that social distancing is giving us a tremendous advantage. It looks like we will be able to manage the hospitalizations without the dire consequences that have been discussed. It also looks like we're going to reach peak around April 21st. And I call your attention to the pink hump in there. Over the next 60 days is when we're going to be dealing with this epidemic the most. And over the next 60 days is the busiest time of the whole year for our farmers. So if we go to the next slide, I just want to show you a little bit about how busy we're going to be. We're going to be planting 10 million acres in the middle of an epidemic. According to March 31st USDA Planting Intentions Report, we're going to be planting 3.6 million acres of corn. We're going to be intending to plant 5.8 million acres of soybeans, 400,000 acres of cotton, 200,000 acres of rice, in addition to the normal work of tending 2 million beef cows, 3.5 million hogs, 300 million chickens, and 75,000 milk cows. So this is an incredibly busy time, and we're overlaying it with a lot of concerns about the epidemic. Given that, farmers have got a lot on their mind. Agribusiness people are going to be working people a lot of hours right now. What can we do to get people ready to take simple strategies that will help them be resilient? So Rob, if you want to hit the next slide. We put together a simple little graphic that was intended to cut through some of the stress of where we are in the epidemic and build resiliency on farm. What happens if you get a positive within your circle, within a family member, within somebody that works for you, within a family member of somebody who has been in contact with you? What happens if you're going to be quarantined? What happens to your whole busy season? So with that in mind, protect people's health first. The usual, separate everybody by 6 feet. You set the example, get everybody taking it serious, all employees, all family members of all ages, stay at home if ill. Plan for sickness, segregate those teams, just like Rob mentioned. Teams don't have to be big employers. Teams could be grandpa and grandma, son and daughter, junior, cousin, brother. Separate by living quarters and make sure people understand that there's a reason why we're not socializing, why we're not sharing space. You're the backup plan for the rest of the farming operation. clean or close. If you have a shower in, shower out facility, or if you have a lunchroom, either deep clean it, sanitize it daily, or close it. Those are vectors of defense against the biosecurity issues we're facing. Something people aren't talking about very much is planning for business succession. You know, if you're the sole proprietorship, or if you're the one that has check writing privileges on the shareholders agreement with your LLC, and you're the one that can incur debt, what happens if you get sick? You have a backup plan. Does somebody else know the checkbook? Does somebody else understand the business so that if you go in the hospital or you're out for 4 weeks, somebody can take over? Suppliers. We thought that we're going to be more issues with suppliers than there has been. It looks like our agri-suppliers have done a fantastic job of getting in early, taking this really seriously, getting their plans in place. We've got a lot of contingency built in there. You've done a great job setting the example for farmers, so they started to take it seriously earlier than they would have when they see lockdown facilities at the co-op and people only dealing with phone at the bank. It makes them take it seriously. Probably our biggest risk right now that we identify is the whole marketing chain. If a feedlot fills up because it can't send cattle to a slaughter plant that's shut down for 3 days for deep cleaning, all of a sudden that backs up order buyers at the local livestock auction. Same thing with hogs, same thing with poultry, same thing with dairy. So we've got to have contingency plans. You want to hit the next slide, Rob? Everybody's really busy. People don't have time to read the resources. If they need it, we have tremendous resources already available through your commodity organizations. National Milk Producers has a fantastic manual and COVID-19 page for dairy producers to just pick up that manual and use. Pork Producers has the same. Corn, soy, you just go down through the list. A lot of ag organizations have done a great job adapting standards and standard operating procedures. The issue is we're in that time of year when nobody has time to even stop and grab a sandwich. So focus on things you can control. There's a lot of concerns out there. You can listen to them on the radio. You can watch them on your phone when you're filling a tank. But the reality is the things you can control that really make the difference on your farm and your agribusiness. Biosecurity, number one. You understand biosecurity from an ag standpoint. We've always dealt with the livestock. We know how to buy virgin bulls, keep spreading disease. We know how to put up wire to keep birds out of chicken houses. We know how to keep calf hatches from touching noses. Apply those same rules to the people you deal with on the farm. Production, everybody's going to be really busy on production right now. We just ask people to focus a little bit on some of the business issues. And we're playing defense. Not only are we fighting an epidemic, we're going into recession. We don't know how fast it's going to come out, but the whole world is going into a self-induced coma to try to save lives. So the economy is going into a coma. We don't know when it's going to come back. Play defense. Farmers are used to doing a lot of cost-benefit analysis on their farms. This is the time to focus on cash flow, not necessarily if it makes the most sense, just preserve cash flow. Use unemployment. A lot of farms in Missouri have been really tight on repayment capacity the last few years, and they've depended on off-farm employment to help make that work in their loan packages. If the spouse that's been pulling in benefits loses their job, don't be too proud to jump fast, get on unemployment, get that income up. Use it with your own employees if you need to. Use supplier credit. We preach taking cash discounts, but this is the time to use every credit line you can to try to preserve your own liquidity and your own working capital. Add the liquidity to survive, to thrive. We know everybody's going to continue to eat. We know when this whole supply chain transitions from feeding restaurants to feeding people in the grocery store, then we're going to have people coming back out again, and we're going to transition back. But we don't know how fast this recession is going to recover. We don't know how fast people are going to come back to work. Farmers are eligible for PPP loans. Secure those. Know your numbers. If you need to work with a lender, know your credit limits. Assume markets are going to get chaotic. There may be times when you can't market hogs, when you can't market turkeys when you were planning to market turkeys. You can't plan to sell feeder calves when you plan to sell feeder calves. So strategize about what you do. Plants are going to close temporarily because they will open back up. And finally, I hate to say it, but anticipate a lot of counterparty failures. There's going to be a lot of small business that are not going to survive and bring in risk. Don't necessarily count on personal checks clearing from people you may have done business with a lot of times in the past. We're going to have a lot of grain to store this fall and maybe not a place to go with it because the ethanol plants have been shut down and not taking corn. There's just a lot of issues that are going to pop up on counterparty failures, and just don't assume all the people you've always done business with are going to be able to meet their promises and their contracts. Rob? And finally, I'll just finish with, you are essential. Take pride in the fact that everybody recognizes anew the importance of the agribusiness sector. Nothing clarifies the mind like going to the grocery store and pick up a few things and there aren't anything left to buy in the grocery store. So take pride in being part of that essential process. Rob, I'll turn it back to you.
All right. Just a couple of things to go through quickly here. Joe already mentioned the Paycheck Protection Program here. This is open to agribusiness enterprises and farmers that are fewer than 500 employees. This is it's a loan that's available for up to 2 times average monthly payroll costs from the past year, plus an additional 25% to cover expenses. And this is a forgivable loan for producers here that can be used to cover payroll costs, as well as most mortgage, insurance, rent, and utility costs over an 8-week period after the loan is made. One caveat, though, the key part of this is that employee and compensation levels have to be maintained in order to keep this available. This is available through SBA lenders. These are private banks, and so folks get it through there. We have heard mixed results in terms of access to that so far. Some people, there are some businesses I've seen reporting that they've been approved for this already, while we've also received reports that a number of other lenders are having difficulty in this space here. This is available to farmers and other agribusiness enterprises. One thing that we are recommending to folks is, as Joe already said, make sure you have your documents in order so that you can have the information available when you need to go to the lender for this here. This is also a program. There's a limited amount of money so far for it, so first come first served basis. So getting that application in as quickly as possible is encouraged. There's also EIDL loans, which are open to agribusiness enterprises, but not farms yet. Again, smaller businesses, fewer than 500 employees. This is a program, emergency or economic injury disaster loans, provides up to $10,000 to any applicants as an advance, plus a loan up to $2 million for expenses that could have been met if not for the disaster. It's a low interest rate. And this one, actually, application is through the Small Business Administration. One thing in the agribusiness space that is interesting as I was looking about this, it depends on how you classify your business. So the example I saw was wineries and vineyards. Wineries, because of the manufacturing side, would be eligible for EIDL loans. Vineyards, because at this point in time, are not eligible. So it depends on how you do production, what your business looks like, whether or not you are eligible. Finally, Joe mentioned unemployment. There are a couple of changes and options that are available. First of all, traditional unemployment insurance in the state of Missouri continues. So if you were eligible for that previous, you are still eligible, and the state has waived the 1-week waiting requirement for benefits. And they are also waiving the changes of contributions for employers that are laying off employees and employees are getting benefits due to COVID-19. The second program, this is a new program that came about because of the CARES Act, Pandemic Unemployment Assistance. This is for individuals who are not eligible for the regular or extended benefits, such as contractors, cultural workers. These programs are administered through the Missouri Department of Labor and Industrial Relations, and their email that they sent out yesterday says that they are still trying to figure out how to get this set up, and they didn't get guidance from the federal government until last Sunday, late Sunday. So they are having to make changes in their program to set that up. So if your eligibility would be under this, you are going to get a denial message that you're not eligible for unemployment at this point in time. Keep checking back with them, and you will be eligible once they get this program set up. There's additional federal compensation available to folks here under both programs, an additional $600 a week of unemployment benefits for up to 4 months for employees there, and it's open to workers who are eligible for regular unemployment or the pandemic unemployment assistance. The final thing that there's actually money going to this, additional money. The state of Missouri is pushing this. There's a shared work program. It's available through the Missouri Department of Labor and Industrial Relations. And so if you see your work go down, let's say 20% across your workforce there, if you spread it out across your workforce, you can actually then allow your employees to work 80%, as long as you're accepted into the program here, work 80%, and then they would receive unemployment for the 20% of their time that they weren't working there. Employers have to apply to participate, but is an option available to employers in order to reduce the work levels, but at the same time not lay everybody off there. So I think that's what we have. I'll turn it back over to Alice for questions.
Excellent. Thank you both so much. We do have a couple of questions here. The first is getting at this idea of processing plants and how some have needed to close. Is there any sense of how many processing plants we have in Missouri, and are any of those affected by COVID-19 cases thus far?
I don't have the statistics right now. I can tell you just anecdotally, there have been some information I've heard about some poultry plants shutting down for deep cleaning, and may or may not have been connected with with a positive, but I don't know what plants we have. They're going down and coming right back up. CDC has a whole protocol for doing that on food plants, and the COVID-19 is not transmissible through the foodstuffs, so that's not a concern. It's just a concern of the labor force.
Great. Another question is concerning the order from the governor about essential businesses. This person's been getting a lot of questions on where to apply for the essential worker permit. Is there a need to apply, or where do people go to get the correct identification that they need to keep on them if they were to get stopped for being out and about whenever we do have this statewide stay-at-home order?
Rob may have more information on government form. I've seen different commodity organizations. I know National Milk has a template that a word template you can come down, customize to your farm, just saying that your employees have, and I know the dairy co-ops have put that out also. And basically it's just the farmer themselves fills it out and identifies themselves as essential business and identifies the person, and then all the employees carry that with them. I can look for that or send it out. But if you want to look at National Milk Producers Federation COVID-19, there's a template there for that you can customize on the dairy side. I'm sure there's others too. Rob, do you know official ones?
I don't know for the statewide. I know that, and I can speak to Boone County, that to get your business classified as essential, you need to, there's a process you can go through the county public health department to get that. And so that would be where I would start looking also in terms of that. But I haven't seen anything on the Department of Health and Human Services talking about that, which is who is managing this crisis for the state.
Sure. I do have a comment here that MDA has some documentation, so we can check into that. And when we send our follow-up email where you'll get the recording to this webinar, we'll try to include some links to those resources that you can look into. We have another question here about the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. What government division is handling that assistance program?
So that's part of the Missouri Department of Labor and Industrial Relations. They are the agency in the state that administers all unemployment insurance claims, and so it's their Division of Employment Security within the division or Department of Labor and Industrial Relations. So if you, I think it's labor.mo.gov is the address, and you can actually access it there. They have an online site then that allows you to submit for unemployment benefits, and that's where it's going to be there. Again, their website, as of last night, said that they're still working through the guidance on that. They're having to do some software changes for their employees for the system there, because right now, if you were an independent contractor, let's say, and you hadn't contributed, and your employer hadn't contributed, you would get kicked out of the system automatically. So it's still some changes having to occur on that, but it's Missouri Department of Labor and Industrial Relations.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, we'll go ahead and close for today. Thank you, Rob and Joe, for joining us for today's webinar presentation. And thank you to our audience too. When you exit Zoom, a post-webinar survey will load in your browser. If you could please consider responding to that, we'll use the results to improve the webinar experience and also brainstorm future webinar topics. Again, you should receive a recorded version of today's webinar within about a day from now via email. We'll be back for our Engaging for Missouri webinar series again on Monday. At that time, Dr. Patrick Westhoff, FAPRI Director, will be here to present about COVID-19's impacts on agricultural markets and farm income. So we'll be sending registration links for next week's webinars later today. Thank you again for joining us and have a happy holiday weekend. Thank you, Rob and Joe, very much.